This is The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. With your host, Tyson Gifford and William Roerick. Episode 124, recorded September 7th, 2017. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. I am your host, the editor-in-chief of TV Enthusiast. My name is Tyson, and I am joined today, as always, by my partner in crime here at TVE, William Roerick.
Hello.
So today, we're going to be talking exclusively about Twin Peaks. We're talking about the last two episodes of Twin Peaks The Returns, titled Part 17 and Part 18. Very creatively titled.
The episodes there weren't any episode names for any of the episodes. I think deliberately, because Lynch had always said like this is like an 18-hour movie.
Yeah. He released like little title-like things, but they were just like episode descriptions that were just like one like sentence or something.
It was I think, well, Amazon, like I watched this on Amazon, so Amazon didn't put them up as episode titles, so it would say episode 18 and it'd say the one line. It's usually an episode description that's usually just a line from the episode. Somebody says that line in the episode.
Yeah, that's kind of all they released. So they released that.
So like
some people have been treating those as like the episode titles, but they're not.
I see. Okay. I just took them to be descriptions, which aren't really descriptions. Like again, unlike a normal show, there's not a description for what happens in the episode. There's just a random line of dialogue. So like, even if you go on Amazon Prime and you look up an episode, what's going to happen in that episode is a complete mystery. You don't even get so much as a summary of what you're about to watch. So
there's no previously on, and there's no scenes for next week.
Right.
Either. So it's all kind of like at the end of the episodes, I don't know if it's like this when you watch on Amazon, but the end, after the credits, all they do is they show like some brief shots from the episode you just saw, and then it just says Twin Peaks this Sunday or something, you know? So it doesn't even show you anything. Like it's only like what you'd already watched.
Like again, like David Lynch, they didn't treat this like a typical TV series. It's meant to be one big 18-hour continuous film, you know.
So let's talk about kind of the events of the episode first. So we're going to start off just talking about kind of what happened over the course of the two episodes. And then we're going to kind of dive into, you know, things that we felt might have been unresolved and our thoughts about the season as a whole. But starting off, we're just going to go through kind of what happened in the episode. So it starts off, we see Mr. C, he's traveling to the other coordinates after, he sent his son off to his death from the past coordinates. By getting to the coordinates, he ends up kind of getting sucked into a like little wormhole thing that kind of drops him off right at the outside of the sheriff's department in Twin Peaks. And Andy's there, and Andy saw, Agent Cooper, and it's like, you need to come in, you know, everybody will be happy to see you.
Yeah, kind of, you know, greeting the evil Cooper without knowing it.
Mr. C goes into the office. He talks to Lucy. She asks him if he wants some coffee, and he says no thanks. And he goes to the sheriff's office where Frank Truman is, and he says he has a little line that they've had throughout the entire series where Frank has to say, "Oh no, that's Harry is my brother. I'm Frank." They repeat that like every time like somebody like encounters him. Which is really weird, but because I guess the guy who played Harry didn't want to be in the show, so they just like
I guess
randomly wrote around him not being there.
Yeah, they just like wrote around him. I guess he doesn't even make like a surprise, like, you know, showing. You just,
The way they wrote around him, it almost feels like he was going to, but it's like, no, just, they didn't want to recast him, and they didn't want to, like, just write him out of the story completely, like, say he was dead or something like that. So they basically just said, oh yeah, he's away, he's sick and in recovery right now. So he's just not here. Mr. C is in Frank Truman's office, and then Cooper, the Cooper we actually know, in a car, like having landed in Washington on his way there, calls up Lucy, and Lucy's confused because she's like thinking, oh, Cooper was just here, but the differentiator here is that this Cooper is like, has that positive energy to him and says, make sure there's a pot of coffee brewing, so it's like this kind of like telltale signs of, oh, this is the real Cooper. She forwards the message to the sheriff. He picks it up and he's talking to him and realizing something's a little weird here because there's another Cooper sitting right in front of him. But he's never met Cooper, so like he doesn't even know that side yet. So
right, he doesn't even know that side of it.
But meanwhile, while all of this is happening, Deputy Chad is escaping from his cell. He's got a key hidden in his boot. He takes it out. He gets out of there, goes to the equipment room and gets a gun. And he's coming back through the prison cell to leave. And Andy has come down, and he's down there and runs into Chad, and Chad's got his gun on him, and he's like, talking a bunch of smack and basically like he's gonna, kill Andy or something. But as he's passing Freddy's cell, Freddy uses his super pile driver punch power.
Yes. to knock open the cell door and hit him in the face with it.
Yeah, knock him out. So then apparently Andy decides, I'll just, open up everyone's cells and take them with me. And he starts heading up. But meanwhile, we have, Frank Truman on the phone with Cooper and with Cooper, the other Cooper in his office. But Mr. C kind of like realizes something's up and starts coming after him and he shoots him. Actually, I believe it's Lucy shoots him.
No, Lucy shoots him in the back. He doesn't.
Yeah.
He would have been dead. He wouldn't have been dead. He couldn't draw faster than Mr. C. So.
Yeah. But Lucy ended up shooting him and he collapsed and, he's talking to Cooper on the phone while this is happening. And
who would have thought
like,
Lucy with the last minute? Who thought like Lucy would ever shoot anybody?
Yeah.
Like, that caught me off guard.
And the act of shooting him taught her how cell phones work.
Yeah, apparently. She was just like, I know how cell phones work now. I'm like, okay. Because one of the plot lines earlier was that Lucy didn't understand cell phones.
Yes. Mr. C is now dead, but this has happened before. And we know this happened at the very beginning of episode 8, the really trippy, weird episode of the season.
He got shot and, he falls down and the woodsman kind of put him back together.
Same way it happened in episode 8 happens again. Woodsmen kind of show up. They're like repairing him as this is happening.
Cooper
Cooper arrives, Andy and all of the people from the prison cells downstairs arrive. Cooper with the Mitchum brothers arrive. So everyone's there and they're like, what the hell's going on? The Mitchum brothers are particularly flabbergasted by this crazy stuff going on. And then while this is happening, the Bob Orb, for lack of a better term, comes out and is like floating around and being menacing, and it starts attacking Freddy, who Cooper tells Freddy, recognizes that, he says, are you Freddy? And he said, yes. And recognizes that this is Freddy's destiny, is to use this gloved fist on this Bob Orb.
Well, yeah, I guess we could just say it's Bob, right?
Yeah.
So let's just say, so Bob comes out, Mr. C, and starts attacking He starts attacking Freddy, and Freddy has the gloved fist, and after a struggle, Freddy manages to destroy Bob with his Hulk hand. and that's it. Bob's gone, and I guess that was Freddy's destiny. His purpose was to kill Bob. Like, you thought it was gonna be Coop, but it's this random British kid we introduced like 3 episodes ago.
Yeah. Who jumps on crates for fun.
Yeah, just on crates for fun.
So he killed the Bob orb. Cooper runs over to Mr. C's body and places the ring on him.
This sends Mr. C's body back to the Black Lodge.
Where he's on fire.
Where he's on fire, yeah, apparently.
He's just sitting peacefully in the chair on fire, reflecting on his failure.
Yeah, exactly.
Should also mention that Gordon Cole and Albert and Tamara all showed up as well.
Yep, so everybody's there, pretty much. And this is where it starts to get weird, because then Cooper addresses everybody, says something about everything being a dream.
Mm-hmm.
Something about dreams, I forget the quote. He says something about everything being a dream, and then he goes with Diane, the real Diane.
Well, we should say that first, is that
Actually, Nido, yeah, I almost forgot. But Nido actually comes up, and she turns, and she reveals herself to be Diane, the real Diane.
Her face morphs into that of Diane, and so now Nido is actually Diane. So Diane's there. The two of them kiss. We think oh, okay, now we have the whole crew back together again. All stuff's going to happen. It's nope, pretty much gone right away afterwards. Cooper and Diane take off. And this is kind of the halfway point. This is where it would cut into the next episode, basically.
This is because he goes through a door, and he tells everybody else not to follow him through the door. And then when he goes through the door, he apparently ends up in the past. We see a scene from Twin Peaks, the earlier series, with James and Laura Palmer. So we know where
cue Laura's theme, and you get
it's in
Laura
black and white
talking
this time instead of color to indicate because the past is in black and white.
Yeah. So they're having that big kind of passionate argument or whatever they had where Laura's bearing her soul. That happened in the past series. And so it's just playing it back again. And then after James leaves, Cooper reveals himself to Laura, and it's the old Cooper, the older Cooper, not old as in the old version of him that we just saw go here. And he's takes Laura by the hand, and he's kind of guiding her, seemingly kind of to try to save her from being killed.
Yeah, so he's changing the past by guiding Laura Palmer away from her track, where she was on track to go end up dead. And we see the scene when he takes her away. We see her body, and it disappears.
Yeah. So we see, well, first off, Cooper, holding her hand, carrying away, she disappears out of Cooper's hand, and we hear, her scream through the woods or something. But then we see, oh, this did have some effect, because we see that, the fisherman who ended up finding her body, he's going out there, more footage from the old thing, but he keeps passing by. He doesn't stop where she died, because her body disappeared. And so apparently she's been saved, something's been changed here. Just to skip back a little bit because we missed it, there is a scene where we see that Philip Gerard remakes Dougie, and Dougie returns home.
Yep.
And we also see,
which we had correctly guessed that's what Cooper had set up
with the seed or whatever it is.
The seed, yeah. So through that we get a conclusion or a happy ending for that storyline with those characters. Dougie's family.
Yeah. And then also, when Cooper was guided to the past, he actually had met up with Philip Jeffries, David Bowie's character.
Yeah.
His same, steam contraption form.
The same
Mr. C
place that Mr. C was led to.
Yeah. And that's what ends up, he's the one that kind of sends him to the past.
Interestingly, we don't see the woodsman this time.
Yeah.
Whereas when Mr. C was led to Mr. Jeffries, the woodsmen were all around that place. They seem to be kind of the gatekeepers. They weren't present this time.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So instead, Cooper, that's how Cooper goes through to the past. But after that, that's kind of the last thing. Cooper holding Laura's hand, and then Laura disappearing. And then you hear Laura's scream. That's kind of the last thing that happens in the first episode of this, of the two we're talking about. the next episode, and I'd watched that, and I'm like, I put off watching the next one for a few days, and so I start the next episode, very different than the first episode. Kind of like any closure we wanted to get, like that's already had. This episode almost feels like the start of a new series or something. It begins, Cooper and Diane are driving. They're near where Mr. C crashed his car earlier in the season. When he crashed and was like vomiting, and when Dougie was claimed in his place.
Right.
So Cooper and Diane are kind of around there. Cooper's like measuring this exact distance that they've gone down this road. He's down there with Diane. He talks to her. They kiss and then decide they're going to drive through this thing. They drive through.
He tells her to kiss him.
Yeah.
Because he says, he makes it sound like once they go beyond that point, that it's a point of no return and that anything could happen. So, So it wasn't like a kiss for the sake of it. It was like, well, this may be the last chance you get.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what it seems like. There's like a sort of finality to it.
Yeah. And so Cooper and Diane, they drive through. Suddenly they're like on like a dark road. It's nighttime. At this point, like everything's kind of changed. Even like the tone of Cooper and the way he is, the way Diane is. There's kind of like a dour mood kind of permeating the whole thing. Like they're not like talking to each other. Cooper doesn't seem happy. It's very just kind of like dark and dreary.
Well, Cooper's attitude seems to have changed.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? But we don't really notice that right away.
Well, we do just in the fact that they're driving silently and they're,
Right. But you could also chalk that up to the mission. What he's doing is very serious. He's focused. Maybe there's not a lot to talk about.
So the two are driving on this dark road. They end up checking into a motel. While Cooper's checking them in, Diane sees herself outside of the car, like looking back at her. And, it's just kind of like a weird little moment. She doesn't seem particularly like shocked by it or anything. And then that's over. They go into the motel and they have sex.
Yep, there's a sex scene. And then
it's kind of like a sadder version of the sex scene with Janie and Doug.
Yeah.
Like, with Diane on top and Cooper just laying there.
Well, anyway, after the sex scene, Cooper wakes up in the morning and Diane is gone. And there's a note there, but the note refers to a Richard instead of Cooper. And I think the name of the woman who wrote the note is different too.
Yeah, it was a different name for Diane as well.
So we don't know. Now here's the thing. It's assumed that Richard refers to Cooper and the other name refers to Diane. Like, that's an assumption that you can make.
Yeah.
But it also could legitimately be referring to a Richard and some other woman. And the thing is, we don't know for sure. It's never confirmed either way. All we know for sure is that, like the note says, Diane is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so Cooper leaves the motel, Diane-less.
It's a different motel now, though. It's like, it was like a 1-story motel when they checked in, and it's like a 2-story motel when he leaves.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't even notice that.
And his car's different, too. He had this kind of old, like, classic black car, and now he has, like, a more modern,
I kind of assumed,
sedan.
like, he just took, like, a different car because, like, Diane ran off with the original car. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird.
I mean,
like, it's parked in a different place and everything.
Diane would have to take the car to, like, leave or something, right?
Yeah, but why would she have another car?
Yeah, I don't know. It's all weird. Again, it's one of those things, like, if you think too hard on it, doesn't make sense, but okay.
So Cooper takes off, he's driving. We see signs that tell us that this is in Odessa, Texas. I don't know where the spot that Mr. C was in when he crashed the car, where at that same entry point. So we don't know exactly where that was and if he tried, like if that was Odessa as well and he's in the same place, but things are like different. It's like from the night that he spent with Diane, like I said, the motel changed. And the car changed, unless that's a different car, whatever it is. Something happened at that point. So Cooper's driving and he sees a diner on the side of the road that says, breakfast, coffee, pies, whatever. And it's called Judy's. Now, what's important about Judy's with a diner is that Judy is a name we've been hearing for a while.
Yeah. Richard Jeffries referred to as Judy. He told Evil Cooper that that's who he was looking for. even to the extent that he told Evil Coop that Judy was somebody he met already, even though Evil Cooper didn't know didn't recognize the name or know what the hell Philip Jeffries was talking about. But
other things have also hinted that Judy might be like Bob's mother, like that demon we saw spitting out Bob.
Right. I mean, who the hell was that demon anyway? It appears like in the beginning of the series, kills a couple people, and then outside of the appearance in like episode 8, and again, nothing.
Yeah, we don't really know, but Judy's a loaded name. Like that, it has a lot more meaning. It's not just like, knowing with Twin Peaks, this is not just like, oh, he happens upon a diner called Judy's.
Right. It's not like,
there's meaning for this.
Yeah, because they brought that name up in a supposedly meaningful context before. They're not just going to have a random, and not have it be connected to that. Mm-hmm. But again, there's the assumption, maybe we're going to find out who Judy is. No, that doesn't happen. There's a waitress there, but her name is not Judy. Yeah. There's another waitress Cooper is looking for, but again, her name is not Judy.
In this diner, the waitress
apparently it's called Judy's Diner, so like, is the woman who owns the diner named Judy? I don't know. Cooper doesn't seem to be concerned with Judy at all in this scene, even though the name of the diner draws him to the diner.
Yeah. And so he's there, he's goes to eat in the diner, he asks the waitress if there's another waitress. As you mentioned, there is, but she was off. Then the waitress is going and she's helping 3 guys over in another booth, and they're kind of being rough with her, and Cooper tells them to stop. They don't take too kindly to that, so they go over towards his booth to kind of threaten him. Yep. But Cooper's a badass, so
he pulls his gun, shoots one of them in the foot. Basically gets the drop on them, tells them to surrender their weapons, and then he puts their guns in the deep fryer.
And then it's almost like he's taken the restaurant hostage, because he's just holding his gun out. Yeah, and he talks to the waitress, and he's like, he talks to the guy on the cook on the other side of the deep fryer and says, I don't know if this temperature is enough to make these bullets go off, but you might want to stand away.
Well, he holds the gun to the waitress, and he demands the address of the waitress who wasn't there. Mm-hmm. The waitress he was looking for. Now, you notice at this point that Cooper's entire demeanor seems to have changed.
Yes. He's very quiet. He's very calculating. He doesn't look happy. Like he's not, the old Cooper would have come in and said, I'd like some coffee, please. And be all chipper, and then gotten his coffee and would be like, this is damn fine coffee. And, that's how Cooper would normally react in a situation like that, even in a hostile situation with guys threatening the waitress or something, he would have handled it in this more cordial way or something. But this Cooper almost feels a little bit more like Mr. C in a sense, like a non-evil Mr. C, I guess. So he's, gets the address for this other waitress. And so he leaves the diner and he's heading out towards where that other waitress is. And we get to her house and he knocks on the door and he says, he's in the FBI, and that makes her open the door because she's apparently in need of some help. And so she opens the door and he sees her, and it's Laura Palmer. Only it's not Laura Palmer. She has a different name too, which is kind of makes us think okay, then the whole Richard and the other woman's name actually was Cooper and Diane. And this is just everybody has different names here or something. They're different people because she's Laura Palmer, but she doesn't act like Laura Palmer. She's got a southern, Texan, accent that Laura Palmer doesn't have. She invites him into her house and he sees a dead body that's never addressed. Why there's a dead body there.
Yeah. Well, let's assume that she killed him. Maybe he was an abusive husband.
Yeah, but nothing is explained about it. He doesn't ask her, nothing. It's just, we just see it. And, she's eager to get out of town, and he's telling her she's this woman named Laura and he wants to take her to Twin Peaks. And she goes along because she needs to get out of Dodge, to borrow a term. So they head off, they drive. He says it's quite a ways, and it is. From Texas to Oregon or Washington is quite a ways. It's like half the country. So they drive that pretty much in real time, it feels like. Just literally, it's super tense, but it's like nothing happens. They're just literally just driving from Texas to Washington, and it's probably, I don't know, about 20 minutes. Them driving, not really talking, at one point thinking minutes. Somebody might be following them.
Yeah, again, that goes nowhere. You know, somebody is following them, but it has no...
Yeah, just going the same way, basically. So they get to Twin Peaks, and you can see these kind of familiar landmarks, the RR Diner. You know, you see all these kind of places. They're driving by it. Cooper's asking Laura if she recognizes any of these places, and she doesn't. And then he pulls up outside of her house, and she doesn't recognize that either. But they kind of take like the real slow walk up to the house, which is also very kind of creepy, like the way they kind of approached walking up to the house. It was like paced like a horror film. They get to the door, but it's not Sarah that lives there. It's not Sarah Palmer. It's another family that's there, and they don't even know who Sarah Palmer is. They've never heard of her. Laura still doesn't recognize the place. They say, Cooper asks them who they bought the house from, and they give like a different name. He asks who that person bought the house from, and they don't know. They check, but they're like, oh, no, we don't have that information, just the person they bought it from. And Cooper just kind of like leaves. They start kind of going back to the car, but it's not kind of over for Cooper. He kind of like something's still kind of nagging at him. So he kind of turns around and he starts kind of heading back towards the house, and he's looking at it. And then all of a sudden Laura lets out like a signature Laura Palmer scream, and the lights in the house just go off. Like she overloaded the circuit breaker or something, you know?
Right.
And that's it.
And that's it. That's the end of Twin Peaks forever. I think Cooper says something like, what year is it? You know,
that's it.
After he realizes, you know, that's not the Palmer home.
And there's one other kind of scene that I just couldn't remember exactly where it's placed, but where we see Sarah Palmer like destroying a picture frame with Laura's picture in it, seemingly out of grief or something, but doesn't really go anywhere. We don't kind of know its placement, you know, or what that has to do with anything. And yeah, that's it. Cooper asks what year it is, and that's the end of the episode. It seems like this is like another, like, oh, this is the start of the next season or something, but Kyle MacLachlan's like, no, there's no talks yet for another series of any kind, you know, going on. So this looks like this just might be the end of Twin Peaks.
It is the end of Twin Peaks, yeah.
At least until they decide they might want to do something else. But I mean, for now, at least, this is the end. I mean, there's no plan. There's no talks, nothing. This is kind of where they wanted to end it, I guess. So this has gotten like a lot of mixed reaction online with people going like, what the hell is this? Just because, like, you know, there was some mixed reaction for the whole season in general, but particularly this ending and just kind of where it kind of took off in this other direction and then just stopped, like cold, with like no reasoning or anything. And so that brings us to some of the unresolved stories, or partially unresolved in some cases, stories from this season. And so I'll kick things off. I didn't put this on my show notes, but I remembered it after talking about it earlier, is Sarah Palmer. What the hell is up with Sarah Palmer and her taking off her face and this thing that is inside of her? We have no idea what that is.
Again, that just happened and went nowhere. There's a lot of little moments in Twin Peaks that seem to have just happened and gone nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Another kind of weird unresolved story was, Aubrey. We had this kind of setup where she was kind of wanted to go to the Roadhouse. There's this weird kind of confusing thing. We kind of correctly guessed that it seemed like she was maybe in a coma or in a dream or something, and that she needed to wake up. And so last week, we talked about on a podcast that she did kind of wake up. She was in the Roadhouse, and all of a sudden there was this flash and she was like in this white room. But nothing about that has been addressed outside of that. Like we just saw, oh, she's in this white room now with no explanation. And I thought maybe there'd be something about that, but nope, nothing at all. No idea what the entire point of bringing her back was besides just
have Audrey back.
Yeah.
Yeah, her scenario, again, it didn't serve a story purpose except for saying, well, this is what's up with Audrey. Which is like, and again, it was like super vague, you know? I mean, other than the end of like her plot line, which was like, wait, we've hinted that this isn't reality and it's not reality.
Yeah.
But again, there was nothing else to it.
And nothing definitive either.
There was nothing definitive. It was just, okay, I guess.
We also had these scenes that took place constantly at the Roadhouse. Maybe those tie into Audrey's story, maybe not. We don't really know. Where we've seen all of these characters that we have no idea who they are talking about other characters who we have no idea who they are. And, like very little of it tied into anything, directly. You know, it could be assumed that some of it ties into Aubrey's story and that was all part of her weird situation. But even still, there's like stuff that we just don't know. The kind of most significant one I can think of is we had a girl sitting in a booth that was literally physically moved out of the booth by some bikers.
Yeah.
Who then started crawling on the floor and then like screaming.
Again, this was a girl we never seen in the series before, this season or any previous season, you know. Never seen her before. She wasn't named. She didn't have any dialogue in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
This is literally the only time she appears. The first and last time. There's no connection to it. The people who moved her out of her seat, again, they weren't connected to anything. They were just random bikers.
Never seen them before or after.
This has literally zero story connection to anything that happens in this whole show. You can remove the scene wholesale and you would not miss it.
Yeah. Which is the case with a lot of these kind of plot lines that were happening in this season. Another of which was Becky and Steven. This junky husband and wife pairing that Becky is the daughter of Bobby and Shelley. So Bobby and Shelley's daughter, Becky, has this kind of abusive, worthless husband named Steven. They have this, you know, like I said, abusive relationship that also has like this weird paranoia from the drug use, and Steven's apparently cheating on her, and she was angry enough to kind of go after him with a gun. He seemingly got away with the woman he was cheating with, and then just kind of for no apparent reason seemingly killed himself in the woods.
Right.
Another thing, you could have taken this entire storyline out, would have made no difference.
Right.
It seemed like maybe this was connecting into something. Nothing. It just kind of ended.
Well, again, he kills himself, and then that's the end of his story.
Yeah. And then we had a storyline with Red, this kind of guy that seemed to have some kind of a weird magic trick with coins. He was introduced in Richard's story. We later found out that he's currently been courting Shelley. And so Bobby and Shelley, even though they have a daughter together, they're not together. And this guy Red is with her, who's this like very bad guy. We're introduced to him. He seems like he's kind of dark and there might be something interesting going on with him. Nope, nothing. Again, story goes nowhere. And then we had another scene where we had this like annoying honking woman that Bobby like went to talk to after there was like this accidental shooting. And we see this like zombie nightmare child kind of rising up in the seat, and Bobby's like staring at and kind of shocked. And they're talking about how they need to get back home and all this other, it's just nothing happens from it. Just a really weird off-putting scene. Absolutely no connection. So it almost feels like you could cut out more than half of the season and make it more concise and fit in everything that actually was addressed in the series.
Right, exactly.
So much else just seems completely disconnected. And it's weird because certain things that we thought were going to be disconnected when we first started watching ended up tying in. You know, the guy that got arrested for murdering the woman that he was sleeping with, and we had this whole storyline, and that ended up tying in to, you know, Cooper and Major Briggs and everything. So we had kind of like, okay, we see where these things are starting to connect, and it seemed like, okay, we're probably going to get some more things connecting here, but we just had so many that didn't at all connect in any way. Stories that just kind of seemed wasted, that didn't really go anywhere. Which, you know, it's like some of them were interesting and some of them kind of really weren't. Becky and Steven wasn't really that interesting. Red was kind of interesting as a character, but they did nothing with him.
Yeah, that's another thing, right? Because they had the scene with Red and Richard Horn, you know, with the magic coin. He was doing a magic trick with the coin. You know, setting him up as like this big evil badass, you know, even more bad than Richard because, you know, he bossed him around, and they hinted that they had this crime ring going on in Twin Peaks. The sheriff was part of, you know, the guy working at the police station was part of it.
Yeah.
You know, it seemed like this whole big storyline. It seemed pretty elaborate. You know, he shows up again. He's dating, Shelley. Yes, I almost said Becky for some reason. He's dating Shelley. You know, it seems like, wow, this is a major, the scene where he runs off with Shelley is literally the last time you see or hear from him, or Shelley for that matter, if I recall correctly.
No, we see Shelley again, just kind of in the background of another scene.
Oh, okay. But that's literally the last time you see that character.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like they built him up and then we're like, I don't. So you know, it seems to be like it seems to be a goose things. In some cases, they build them up and then they disappear, or it goes nowhere.
Yeah. So that kind of happened a lot throughout the series. Now we're going to just kind of go over some theories we kind of have, or like things that we can discuss what we think they might mean, that were kind of a little bit more open-ended, mainly tied to the last episode. First off, we have this kind of other world. Like what's your take on this? This other world, everybody has different names. There's kind of a dour atmosphere. Like you said, Cooper's kind of different. His demeanor is different in this.
I don't know. Like, is it another world? I mean, I have no idea what the hell's happening.
Cooper asked what year it is, so that can imply something else. It could imply like a different time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, at the beginning of the episode, we see, you know, we see Cooper in the Black Lodge. Or like a flashback to her or something, but we see the guy in the Black Lodge. What's his name?
Philip Gerard.
Philip Gerard, and he says that line: "Is it past or is it future?" You know, yeah. And that's right at the beginning of the episode. That like sets us off. I think that line being at the beginning of the episode has more significance. I think putting that line at the very beginning of the episode into the end, like that's significant. That has meaning to
there's also Cooper saying that this is a dream in the last episode. Right. Which could imply that this is the real world and that everything in Twin Peaks is like this kind of in unreality. And this is like this weird dream or delusion or something of Cooper's or whatever Richard his name is in this world. There's a lot of different things that can go on. One of the things that it could also be is that this is some kind of like a weird loop or a trap, similar to like the Black Lodge itself, like a limited space. That's controlled by Judy, because we do see Judy's diner, and this could be like kind of her world or her prison for people.
Could be.
Almost like a hell, like an afterlife or something.
So like he went into like a sort of afterlife or an alternate dimension at this point.
Yeah.
And then there's the argument to be made, Laura Palmer's there and new identity because, you know, Cooper changed the past and saved Laura Palmer, which was also suggested.
Yeah.
But again, it's not even clear that happened or if that was real.
Yeah. I mean, well, this is Twin Peaks. Nothing's different. Really. And then the other kind of scene that I kind of wanted to talk about, just cause like I have an idea on, is Diane and Cooper's sex scene, which I don't know if you agree with me on this, but to me it felt like it was set up initially as like this thing that they wanted to do to kind of like overwrite her memories of being raped by Mr. C. And that's why Cooper was just kind of laying on the bottom, because Diane is like taking control and taking agency.
Apparently Diane gets super uncomfortable with it halfway through, because she's like crying or some,
And she's kind of holding her hands over his face and...
Yep, covering his face. And then after it's done, she takes off, she leaves.
And says in her note that she doesn't recognize him anymore.
Right.
So, but that's also adhering to this different identity that it seems like Cooper is now like the only person who doesn't fall into this trap of thinking he's somebody else, or I don't know if that's the real him or what, but he's the only person that's kind of holding on to his identity of this past self, who thinks of himself as Cooper and not as Richard, and who thinks of, Laura Palmer as Laura Palmer and not this other person that she is now. So I guess maybe this could be an afterlife thing. I've heard some people say that it's a message. The idea is that you can't go back, that like you can't change things,
That's an interesting take on it.
Yeah. Maybe that kind of ties into the idea that he's being punished for not changing things and he's in this trap now or something. There's just lots of ways you can look at it, but it's something that it's like you can talk about it, but you can't resolve it.
Right. You can't resolve it.
Which is Twin Peaks.
Again, if people were expecting a coherent conclusion, then they're watching the wrong show. I think, I always knew like this would probably end on a huge what the fuck, and yeah, it did. Like even
so
more. So
what do you think of this season?
I don't know. I don't really know. A lot of it was very well made. I give it that. There was a lot of interesting stuff, a lot of good stuff to speculate on. Again, though, there was also a lot of stuff that just happens that seems to be meaningless or goes nowhere. There are points where it seemed to drag or to meander.
Yeah, like this drive with Laura and Cooper.
Exactly. Which also, the ending is kind of like... The ending is kind of like a punch in the gut, because it's like, it doesn't leave you with any kind of resolution, not even a soft resolution.
If you had issues with Lost, the ending to Lost, don't even try to watch Twin Peaks.
Comfort in there is zero comfort in that ending, Yeah. So I would say probably a B.
That's like your ranking?
Yeah.
I kind of I can't give it like a ranking directly. Like in many ways, I really liked this season. I think there were parts where it really dragged and parts where I had issues with it. Episode 8, which originally I was like, what the fuck is this? Ended up probably being my favorite part of the whole series.
Right. Even though, again, when you look back at episode 8, now the series is done, you realize that really had fuck all to do with anything as well. Yeah. Apparently. But it's a work of art. Who cares?
Yeah. It's I look back on that as like an amazing thing.
You can, aside for like the bit at the beginning, that episode is almost completely standalone.
Yeah.
So
basically everything from the point that Nine Inch Nails finished their song.
Or you could even say from the Nine Inch Nails part, because Nine Inch Nails singing at the bar has nothing to do with the plot of the show. So yeah. That was just David Lynch wanting to put some Nine Inch Nails into his show. Like the musical bits were, again, I think that was David Lynch wanting to showcase, some music that he enjoyed, some artists that, he was friends with or whatever.
I saw somebody refer to it as like saying that Twin Peaks Returns is like a variety drama in the way that the Tonight Show is a variety show,
Yeah, right.
Because it's like every episode ends with a musical act and,
Oh yeah, because we have like an hour of like drama and shit, and then at the end of it, it's like, and this week's musical guest.
Which is just kind of funny and different way of looking at it, but I kind of like that too.
I kind of like that too, yeah.
I think besides like the kind of like cool dark stuff, like definitely episode 8, like I said, like you said, it's like a piece of art. Besides that, I really also dug the humor in the series. there were like long stretches where there wasn't any, but then when there was humor, it hit really like perfect for me. I loved, a lot of people had issue with Dougie. I think a lot of people's
Dougie
issue with
stuff was, again, that was humor. There was stuff like somebody pointed out there's a juxtaposition in the show where like extremely dark, brutal stuff happens. There's the stuff with the monster at the beginning who eats people's faces, and it's, they show it and it's gory. And then there's this happy land fantasy stuff like the Mitchum brothers, they're just, the kind-hearted Mitchum brothers, it's just this goofy, overly sappy stuff. And it's like such a bizarre juxtaposition.
Yeah, it just keeps you always off guard, I think. And it makes you unprepared for when the dark stuff happens, and then it makes you crack up even harder when the funny stuff happens because it's so out of place.
Right, exactly.
But I really dug, like, I liked Dougie. Like, I know a lot of fans disliked the character, or they thought it just went on too long. I think the issue for these people wasn't so much Dougie, it was the fact that Dougie was something holding back Cooper.
Right, Dougie was something holding back Cooper. And again, Cooper wasn't really somebody we got much of this season either. Even though Kyle MacLachlan, the actor, was very prominent.
He basically had 3 or 4 roles in this.
Yeah, 3 or 4 roles. He had a large presence. The character of Dale Cooper, the actual character of Dale Cooper, probably showed up in the show for 5 minutes. because you can argue everything after Cooper goes in the door is no longer really Dale Cooper, because he no longer acts like the Dale Cooper everybody knows.
One theory I've seen on that is that he kind of merged his, like, the Bob and him and everything, like these different aspects of him were all merged.
Right. That's one theory going on that. But like, you did get Dale Cooper back by saying like the Dale Cooper everybody remembered and loved probably had 5 minutes of screen time total in the season.
Not much at all. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, not much. Yeah.
And, and literally like on like episode, 16 or 17? 16, I think episode 15 or 16 or something is like when we get him back.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, people's complaints about Dougie and how he held back Cooper from showing up. I thought Dougie was hilarious. I loved the Mitchum brothers and how Dougie's interaction came with them. I loved the kind of weird stuff like the way that the Hitchens died with the Russian accountant.
Some random character. It's a random occurrence. It's like, they just randomly get killed before they kill Dougie. It's the way the show operates. I really love the way, again, the bizarre way, Dougie was a complete invalid, who couldn't think or function. And yet, instead of people realizing this and like hospitalizing him or something, people coming into contact end up leading him around to where he's supposed to be. He kind of
stumbles into success too. It's really funny.
Yeah, he kind of stumbles. It's kind of funny, It's kind of,
It started with the whole like Mr. Jackpots thing, which is really funny.
It's kind of weird because it's kind of like the opposite of what happens in a narrative where, the characters, move the plot through their agency. And it's sort of like in Dougie's case, the plot sort of moves him.
Yeah.
Because he
just moves him where he needs to be whenever he needs to be there.
Because Dougie doesn't have any agency on his own.
Yeah, he just kind of follows like lights and things he sees in the corner of his eye and, is able to like draw like a child over documents and find like corruption.
so in this case, it's like the plot moves him along. So that relationship between character and plot is backwards.
Yeah.
This kind of turned on his head. That's interesting.
He's basically the happiest, kindest zombie character we've ever seen.
Yes. Hello.
That's going to be a classic for me. Next time I go to Vegas.
And Kyle MacLachlan's delivery of that line is just perfect. The way he delivers that. Hello. I mean, Kyle MacLachlan's acting in like every part of this was brilliant. Like, you gotta think of, like, the different roles he had to play in this season. And, And they were wildly different, from Dougie to Mr. C to Dale Cooper to
Somber Dale Cooper.
Somber Dale Cooper. You know, they're all wildly different performances, and he nails every single one of them.
And oftentimes transitions between them.
Yeah, and oftentimes transitions seamlessly, it seems, between them.
Yeah.
Too. You know, it's fantastic. Fantastic acting from Kyle MacLachlan. You know, that guy's just awesome. He was also awesome when he showed up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You know.
So do you think in another 25 years we're going to get another Twin Peaks series?
No, I don't. Everybody's going to be dead in 25 years. What the hell would it? Who the hell would be in it?
Yeah. Who the hell would make it?
David Lynch
is like in his 70s.
Yeah, he's not even going to be around. So no, there's not going to be another Twin Peaks in 25 years. I don't think there's not going to be a Twin Peaks period.
There is another book coming out. Mark Frost wrote before this season came out. He released this book.
It's supposed to fill in some plot between season 2 and season 3.
But there's another one coming out later too.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard about that. But so, on television.
Yeah. On television, I don't think, I don't think there's going to be any more Twin Peaks. I think that part of it is that, I don't think Showtime has any interest in continuing it. I don't think it did particularly that well for them. So yeah, I think that's part of it. I think part of it is just that I think David Lynch and Mark Frost are done with it too. This is the story they wanted to tell and they finished it. And there's a lot of stuff that's kind of fans are going to be unsatisfied about. That doesn't mean they're not done.
Right.
So that's it for Twin Peaks then, I guess. Pretty much forever.
You know,
if it does come back
character at the end of this season to say see you in 25 years or any time, so that doesn't happen.
Just what year is it?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so that's it for our discussion. If Twin Peaks does somehow get like another season, of course we're going to cover it. Twin Peaks has been kind of important to our show. It was our first show club. We talked about the movie on one of our early podcasts. And it's just been like a big part of our site for those reasons. And we've gone through this whole season. So if it comes back, of course, we're going to talk about the next season or whatever, but I don't think it is.
I don't think there'll be any more Twin Peaks discussion on this podcast.
Yeah.
It's somber.
But we do have some shows coming back in the next couple of weeks to talk about as we round out the show. By the time this podcast is available, Friday, September 8th, BoJack Horseman returns on Netflix and One Mississippi returns on Amazon. Then on Saturday, September 9th, comes to Sci-Fi. This was a web series with Nathan Fillion and what's his name that played Wash in Firefly. Can't think of his name right now, but the two of them, both from Firefly, play actors from a sci-fi show, much like Firefly, and it's them, they go to conventions.
Right, okay,
and make appearances at conventions.
I remember
so this is like a series
ages ago.
Yeah, it was a web series, and now they're going to be airing it on Sci-Fi.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Sci-Fi canceled Dark Matter, by the way.
Yeah, that was unfortunate, and they renewed Killjoys, which wasn't as good as Dark Matter.
Well, I read they renewed Killjoys for a final season.
Yeah,
so that's going to be gone too.
Yeah, it'll be gone after its final season airs. But yeah, those two shows have always been like back to back.
Yeah.
And they were very similar plot wise in that, they were both kind of space dramas about lovable rogues.
I agree with you. Dark Matter was the better show.
Oh yeah, a lot better. So I'm kind of sad that's going to end. There's still some more episodes left in the season.
So it seems like, I thought it was really nice that Sci-Fi Channel is getting some quality science fiction shows, and it doesn't seem like that's panning out, especially after this cancellation.
Most of the stuff they have coming up isn't looking particularly great. A few things are. I think Happy looks really funny. That's the one about the detective that is like sees a unicorn or something, like a singing unicorn or something, and he's this like grizzled detective and he's hallucinating this thing.
I literally haven't heard of this.
It looks really funny, and that looks good. There's that Krypton series I really have no interest in. that's about, Superman's grandfather.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot that's really all that interesting coming up. We still got Magicians continuing on. We still have The Expanse continuing on. So there's still some good stuff, but the real quality of stuff coming back to that channel has kind of started to halt. But then this Sunday, September 10th, 2017, The Deuce debuts on HBO. This is James Franco playing twin brothers involved in the early days of the porn industry. And it's a series from David Simon, who did The Wire. So kind of a lot of big names attached to it, and period pieces in HBO are like a big thing too, like Boardwalk Empire and stuff. So David Simon too. People are obsessed with David Simon shows. So that's going to be a big one. The Orville comes to Fox that same day as well. This is the Seth MacFarlane Star Trek parody that's coming out oddly close to an actual new Star Trek show.
Yeah, like weird. And apparently, from the reviews I'm seeing, this actually isn't a parody or a comedy at all. They're playing it straight. Mm-hmm. Apparently it's actually a drama with some jokes sprinkled into it.
Yeah.
But according to reviews, sparingly.
It's kind of being presented like a parody, but it looks like it's going to be kind of just more like a funny drama.
Yeah.
But then Outlander comes back to Starz on the same day. Fear the Walking Dead comes back to AMC. And Top of the Lake comes back to Sundance. So that's a busy day. Sunday, September 10th. Then on Tuesday, September 12th, The Mindy Project comes back to Hulu. On Wednesday, September 13th, Broad City comes back to Comedy Central. More importantly, in my opinion, though, is South Park returns, which I'm super excited for. And there's 2 South Park games coming out this year, too. So just lots of South Park to be excited about. Then on Thursday, September 14th, Better Things. This is a Louis C.K. produced show, returns to FX. And Riviera debuts on Sundance Now. So Sundance Now is kind of like an HBO Go-like service. Like if you have Sundance on your service and use your authentication to access Sundance Now, but apparently they're going to have some exclusive shows. And Riviera is the kind of first one of that. Doesn't really make sense to me. Sundance doesn't have that many shows, so they should have just put this on Sundance and Sundance Now, but apparently this is something they're trying out, so we'll see how that goes. Then on Friday, September 15th, 2017, American Vandal debuts on Netflix. This is like a mockumentary parody of like all the true crime documentaries.
Oh, right.
Like stuff like Making a Murderer. And it's about a guy who like vandalized property, and it's just like overly dramatic story about a documentary about him. Somebody who just did a small crime like vandalism. But that's coming on Friday, September 15th. That's it for the next week. Until then, you can reach me on Twitter. I am at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will on Twitter. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, TVEnthusiast.com. You can subscribe to this podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. If you're wondering what we have coming up in the next couple of weeks on the podcast, now that both Game of Thrones and Twin Peaks have ended, next week we are going to be talking about Marvel's Defenders. Came out about a month ago now, I think, and we just haven't gotten to it because we've been busy with other shows. But we're gonna talk about the entire season for that. Then the next week after that, we're gonna be talking about The Tick. And then we're going to kind of meander around with just some kind of stuff that's coming up and going for the next couple weeks. And we'll get back into a regular show with Mr. Robot, which debuts on October 11th. So that's it, everybody. Thank you for listening. Good night.
Good night.
If you would like to voice your opinion, send an email to theweeklyset@TVEnthusiast.com. TV Enthusiast is a part of the Enthusiast Media Network. Stay tuned to TV Enthusiast and the Weekly Set podcast for more